What's up, guys? What's going on? I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology's daily devotional, and we are continuing our study in John. Man, John is good, isn't it? It's about Jesus. We get to see Jesus full-fledged and get to know his heart, and that's the purpose. Because to know Jesus' heart allows us to trust him more, man. He is just such a good God that when we find out who he is, man, we've got to run to him. And so I'm glad you guys are here listening and studying. We're in John chapter 5. We are now in a new chapter, man. We're about to see another miracle that Jesus does and how he knows what's in man. So if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and read John chapter 5, 1 through 9. John chapter 5, 1 through 9. Stop the tape, check it out, see what it has to say, come back. And we're going to answer the questions. And if you've already read, then, man, let's just go ahead. You don't have to stop the tape. We could just go ahead and start reading. So what's going on in the story? That's the first question, man. What's happening? Well, it says Jesus goes up to Jerusalem. There's a feast going on, and that's why he's in Jerusalem. Now, just a little preliminary that we're going to talk about. Again, I think last episode we talked about how this might be a cyclical type of understanding of the book rather than chronological. And here's another key that points to it is that John begins to talk about Jesus in regards to these feasts or these festivals that the Jews are having. And this one's unnamed, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But the other ones are the Passover, and then the Feast of the Tabernacles, and then dedication, which is now Hanukkah. And so it just talks about Jesus and how he actually lines himself up to each of those festivals, each of those feasts that the Jews have. But this one in particular doesn't give a name for it. And the reason being, I believe, is because at the end, we're going to see that it is the Sabbath. And so instead of a feast, it is the Sabbath that we're focusing in on. And so that could be a reason why John didn't name it. But John has whatever reason he wants to not name it because he's the one that wrote this book inspired by the Holy Spirit. But I think that may be one of the reasons. And a guy I had read talked about how the Sabbath is kind of the foundation or establishment of these what are called holy convocations. And those are what the feasts are. And the Sabbath is kind of like a beginning to all of that. And so as John begins to talk about Jesus in regards to these festivals, well, he first talks about Jesus in regards to the Sabbath. Anyway, let's continue on and see what happens. Well, it says that there's a guy that's by the pool, been there for 38. Well, it hadn't been by the pool for 38 years, but had been hurt and sick by the pool for 38 years at this place. It's got 5 porticos or something like that. And John says that because he wants to discuss the greatness of the facility that was there, because it's housing a bunch of people who come and just want to be healed. You know what I mean? Or sick. It says invalids, blind, all kinds of people. It's kind of like going through and seeing a whole bunch of the homeless outside of Salvation Army when they're about to close the doors for housing that night or feeding or giving food out or something like that. It's just a ton of people around there. And so he wanted to allow the reader to see and visualize the immense crowd that was down by these pools. A little thing that I need to talk about when I say we got to talk about the warrants is that if you're reading through the King James, you're going to see an additional verse. You're going to see verse 4. And if you're paying close attention as you're reading through whatever other Bible translation you have, you're going to see it's probably missing verse 4. And this is because this is understood to not be original to the manuscript, what John actually wrote. And for deeper understanding or discussion, man, check out I'm going to put it up here, I guess, discussion on understanding the scriptures and the way these scriptures are put together and how we formulate it. So check that out and see, and you'll understand a little bit more about that. And I'll also probably talk a little bit more about it later on during John, because there is a specific pericope or story in John that pertains to that. So we'll talk about that later. If you have questions, you can put it in the comments and we can discuss a little bit of that. But we'll talk about it later for sure. Um, anyway, as this guy's just chilling there, Jesus sees him and he asks him, "Hey, man, you want to be well?" And then the guy's like, "Man, I ain't got nobody to put me in the water when the waters move, man." And he's like, and then whenever I finally get a chance to go down there, because all the strength and time it takes, somebody goes in before me, so I don't even get a chance to go in. And I feel like the guy's like, he looks at Jesus and he's like, "Hey, I ain't got nobody to put me in the water, wink, wink, put me in the water, man." And the assumption is that somebody brings him there when they assume the waters might move, and so he's waiting to get in the pool. But that certain somebody that put him there obviously ain't good enough a friend to stick around to throw him in the pool. And so he's like, Jesus. Well, he didn't say Jesus. He don't even know who Jesus is. But he looked at him. He's like, "Hey, dude, you can stay here and help me. Talking about I want to get well. Put me in the pool." But Jesus looks past all of that, and he just tells the brother, "Take up your bed and walk. Take up your mat and walk." And the dude was healed instantly. It said immediately he took up his bed and he walked. There's a couple of things that are going on here, implications that we got to see is that the man believed in the power of God. And that verse that was taken out kind of explains what's going on and why a person can be put in the waters. It says that an angel probably comes by and moves the waters, and the people lower themselves in there because they feel the waters give healing after the angel drops off the power of God. And so we can see here that this guy believes in the power of God, but that this power has in no way affects God and a relationship with him. And so it's just kind of like magic, kind of like a genie or something. Really more like magic. It's like God drops his power off into the water, and then whoever can make it there first gets it. It's not a personal thing. It's an impersonal power of God. That's one implication. So he believes in the power of God, obviously, but he doesn't believe in the relationship that God desires with his people. And then secondly, Jesus looks past all of that, man. He just heals the brother. And so what Jesus is doing is showing a personal relationship with this man about it. And so I'm trying to let you know that it's a personal thing that's going on between God and between man. And so in this story, what does that imply about God? That's the next question is what is this story saying about God? Well, it's definitely saying that he's a healer. It's saying that God heals the sick. This brother couldn't walk for 38 years. That's a long time, man, without having the ability to, I'm not sure exactly his illness or anything, but he wasn't able to put himself he wasn't able to put himself into the waters. And so obviously he was an invalid in some type of way, and God healed him from that immediately. What's so powerful about that healing is that it was a full restoration. It was a wellness, a wholeness that was brought back to him, because he didn't have to go to some kind of physical therapy, or he didn't have to train himself to walk again, because miracles of God work every day as we see people learning to walk again, learning to move again after some kind of accident. But this was just an immediate wholeness to him. And so God heals, and he heals completely. It's also a personal God, that it's not about religiosity. It's not about the magicalness of God, but it's about a relationship, a personal. And when I say relationship, I'm saying that God desires for the healing of these people. That it wasn't just a random act of healing, but God desired for the healing of this person. That's why he went up to him and said, "Man, do you want to be well?" You know what I'm saying? Do you want to be well? And second, what's to say about man? Well, that's the next question. Well, I think what's important about this is, are we having a willingness to change? What's our desire? What's our heart? Are we looking to do the things necessary in order for us to change. Because this brother was obviously, when Jesus said, take up your bed and walk, take up your mat and walk, he got up and walked, man. He picked it up and did it. He had a willingness to at least listen to whoever was in front of him and do what he had to say. That's the immense desire that he had to be made well. And so for us, what is our desire as mankind? Is like, what is our desire to be well? How much are we willing to do in order to be whole? And then second, I think that it's a personal God is greater than religiosity, because he was looking for this magic in the waters, but he encountered a personal God. This is a personal God, one that doesn't just randomly do things, arbitrarily do things. He encountered the personal God of Jesus. And so for us, I think that is greater, that religiosity or relationship, relationship is greater than religiosity. And I forgot to mention, guys, as we going through this, that it says, and the day was the Sabbath. Dun, dun, dun. And so we're going to see a little bit more implications on that later on in the next episode, and the next episode after that. But how do we apply these truths to our lives, man? Well, first off, man, if you're sick and you're hurt, you're broken in any way, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, go to God. He is a healing God. He is the healer God. We've seen that in the last episode as he healed the boy, the son. And now we see it again as he heals this man, this guy who just took up his mat and walked. He used to be carried on, that mat, which was made of straw to be able to carry him to that place because he couldn't move. Now he was able to pick up and put on his shoulder. What a powerful message that God heals and restores. So whatever it is that's going on in your life right now, man, recognize that God can work at work. And then second, like, what is our desire? Are we desiring this relationship with God? Are we seeking the personal God of the Bible? The one in whom desires a relationship with us. As we've seen from the very beginning, it says he dwelt among men because he desired to be with his people. Hey, I appreciate you guys for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.